Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Leon Blevins with EPCC TV. As I've told you before, I retired after 44 years of teaching at community college. But I started my teaching career 53 years ago in Deming, New Mexico. That was school year 1963-64. And I pastored a church, a Baptist church, at Columbus, New Mexico. Then I went from there to California, a little town called Holtville, California, close to Calexico in the United States, in California, and Mexicali across the river. And then ended up back here in El Paso on and off from 1964 until now. And over these years, I've always been fascinated with these obelisks that I see at the boundary. And on one side it says the United States, and on the other side it says Mexico, in the appropriate languages, of course. And so I began to study and read more about that. And when I was teaching in Deming and pastoring in Columbus, I met a man named Bill McGaw, that he wrote a book, he had a publication called Southwesterner. And he wrote stories about these things, and he wrote about once in a while he'd write about the U.S. Boundary and Water Commission. Now that sounds kind of way out there about a bureaucracy, but I got interested in that. Recently I was talking to a colleague named Ken Gorski in the architecture department at Community about what shows I should do, and he said, well, you need to meet my wife. I'd met her at a conference, Deborah Little, and he said she worked for the International Boundary and Water Commission. I called her and asked her if she'd be on, and she said, no, I've been away for a while, but you need to talk to Ed or Edmund Dracena and have him on. He's the commissioner. Guess what? I called Ed. Ed, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation.
Good to have you here because, you see, I know this just from seeing these things, but you know the operational working part of the commission as a commissioner. You live here in El Paso.
Yes, as a matter of fact, born and raised in El Paso.
And this is unique for your commission, isn't it? That it's located outside of Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, one of the unique features of the International Boundary and Water Commission is that it's not in Washington, D.C., like many of the other headquarters. We're located here in El Paso. And my counterpart is in Ciudad Juarez,
okay.
My fellow commissioner, only he represents, obviously, the Mexican government.
And is your position a political appointment?
Yes, I was appointed by President Barack Obama back in 2010 and have served in this capacity for a little over 7 years, as you can quickly figure out.
Well, you've had a lot of interesting things happening, a lot of challenges, I'm sure. I was telling Carol, who's behind the camera over here a while ago, that one time I was up in the Colorado mountains where I used to climb around a lot and saw a sign there somewhere that said that was where the Rio Grande River began.
It's correct.
It's because of all the snow melt and the runoff and everything. It comes down through here, and it comes right down through the middle of New Mexico. But now your jurisdiction as a commissioner with this is from San Isidro or San Diego area to the bottom of Texas, right?
Yeah, all the way down to Brownsville, Matamoros, Mexico. We cover just under 2,000 miles of border. 1,200 of it is on river boundary and the balance land boundary.
Now there's an interesting history behind that about the surveying of the boundary, the challenges that were there with the topography and the population and the natives and all of that stuff, and I'm sure you know all of that history.
Yes, 1848, at the end of the Mexican-American War, the United States and Mexico, respective presidents, appointed the first commissioners, and their first charge was to establish the boundary. So just as you described, they had wagon trains and on horseback, and they traveled across Texas and up from Mexico, and they met here in El Paso as part of the survey. Another team of commissioner and surveyors started in San Diego doing the survey. So it took several years and different commissioners over those years to really establish what the international boundary is today. Of course, we're all familiar with the 1853 Gadsden Purchase.
Right.
And that required an adjustment to the boundary. And again, going out and with stark equipment and supplies and reestablishing the new boundary.
Well, recently I had the superintendent of the Chamizal on this show. And so you even had to deal with that, or your previous commissioners, with straightening out the boundary with the Chamizal Treaty.
Exactly. The 1963 treaty was established to rectify the location of the boundary. Most people realize rivers flow like a snake. It just meanders down, but over since 1911 there had been a dispute between the United States and Mexico on the Chamizal property, and the '63 treaty resolved it under L.B. Johnson, President of the United States, under his administration.
Now, it was done by channelizing with a lot of concrete and things like that to keep it from meandering quite so much.
Right, exactly. You know, it rectified it. It made it a much more easy to recognize boundary. And then the change in property ownership, a little over 800 acres were transferred from the United States over to Mexico, and then about 190 or so acres also were transferred. Well, the ownership remained in the United States. So it was truly a correction that needed to occur because of the meandering river.
Now, I've taught for years in government classes that two of the basic purposes of government and organizations of government is to regulate our lives and to provide services. Now, what about your commission? What are aspects of regulating people's lives? What about regulating the water that's flowing into that river?
Well, the regulating of the water is something that the Bureau of Reclamation takes the lead on. The International Boundary and Water Commission's mission is the application of the United States and Mexican treaties. So under those treaties that involve water and boundary, we are responsible for ensuring compliance. Both commissioners have that responsibility. So, and if there's differences that occur, as we just described under the Chamizal, where the meandering river changed the boundary, we're responsible for correcting that. And that's exactly what we did. In that case, we did it through a treaty. In other cases, we do it through what we refer to as minutes. And those are international agreements between both countries that have the same force as the treaty, but they're interpretations of the treaty. So we use those minutes to further refine what the treaty intention was, and we do that all along the border as well.
Well, I've told my classes on some occasions from the news that I would see that the United States was suing Mexico because Mexico was not letting enough of the rainfall running off the mountains come into the Rio Grande River. What about that?
Well, the river flows, as you described, from southern Colorado all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And the water that we provide to Mexico here in El Paso, Ciudad Juarez, at the Acequia Madre, that's where Mexico gets its water. That comes under the 1906 treaty. So that water that's flowing from U.S. to Mexico, we make sure that they get their fair share. Mexico, in the lower reaches of the Rio Grande, as you get down by Harlingen and McAllen, those waters come from Mexico. So Mexico has a responsibility to deliver water to the United States in that stretch of the river. So the Commission monitors the water that's being delivered from those two river systems along the Rio Grande. We have similar responsibilities in the Colorado River. Again, domestically, Bureau of Reclamation does the management of the water, but as it gets into the international, what we're supposed to deliver to Mexico at in southern Arizona and southeastern California, at that point, Mexico, the Mexican section and the U.S. section monitor the amount of water that's being delivered from the Colorado River. So it's a big job, but we have 9 offices along the border to do that work.
Well, here we are in late April of 2017, and just this past weekend I was at Socorro in front of the Socorro Mission, and your agency had a big 18-wheeler truck there that was inside. It showed maps, and one of your assistants, I forget her name, a young lady, and she was showing us the maps. It showed Falcon Dam and the lake and all of that down there. So in that sense, you also are regulating lives, but you're also providing services. In that case, it's a lot of recreational service.
Yeah, we love to get our trailer out to events such as you described, as well as to schools, high schools, and University of Texas El Paso and other universities, because it has encapsulated in that trailer a snapshot of the history of the commission, and it's been pretty successful. Sally Speeners, a foreign affairs officer, probably may have been the young lady that was there
No, I don't
guiding
think her
you
name
through
was Sally, but it was.
Lori
I
Kuzmansky.
think that might have been.
Lori Kuzmansky, she's our public relations lead, and she manages the trailer from time to time, running it all over the Southwest.
Would you, from time to time, have a kind of a journey of this? You fly helicopter, any other ways that you can kind of survey the border and the water and the desert? What do you do?
Well, in today's world, you can almost get a flight to anywhere, major city. So if I have a meeting in Tijuana, Baja California, I'll fly to San Diego, or if I'm going to Brownsville to meet with folks in that region in our offices down in Mercedes, I'll fly down to Houston and take a link jump over to Harlingen. So we can get to almost anywhere fairly quickly with the different airlines that service those communities. So, but in the past, we had our own plane. Unfortunately, it got wrecked, and so we weren't able. We don't use an airplane anymore. It was getting pretty expensive, also.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you have an unusual ribbon of jurisdiction, thousands of miles along the way. Now here we are, as I mentioned, our date to time frame this, and we have a president of the United States named Donald Trump, and he got elected partly on making the claim he's going to build a wall, a big, beautiful wall, and he's going to make Mexico pay for it. Is this complicating your job because he's trying to get funding for that, and some contractors have actually been looking at building parcel. And as we know, we have some fencing already along the border. Has that affected your job in any way, say when they started doing the first fencing along our border?
Yes, realizing that the border fence is completely under the jurisdiction of the Department of Homeland Security. But we do work with Department of Homeland Security where they're going to place the fence to see if there's any areas that we need to take closer look at to make sure it doesn't interfere with our responsibilities in delivering water or other environmental matters with Mexico. So yeah, we work very closely with them, but it is their charge to produce the border fence. And the current situation is they're communicating with us where they want to place this new border fence under the new administration. And we have been working with them in the past, and I suspect we'll be able to successfully achieve some level of understanding as to what and if it can be placed in the locations that they want to place it. Because we have a treaty, it's a 1970 treaty, that gives us some obligations to Mexico. It's an international agreement, obviously, and gives us some responsibility on how and where we place the fence.
Now, when did you start doing this job, you say?
In 2010.
2010. During that time, what was your biggest challenge?
We've had the Colorado River, the drought in the western part of the United States. We negotiated multiple minutes to try to proportionately reduce water and deliveries to Mexico along the Colorado River. We've had border fence disagreements and understandings to reach, not only with Mexico, but domestically with agencies in the United States. We had a serious drought. We've had the worst drought in Texas history in this time period from 2010, followed by the wettest year in Texas history. So a lot of challenges there. Mexico's delivery of water to the United States in the Lower Rio Grande is a big challenge in making sure that we can reach agreement as to how and when that water should be delivered. So those discussions are ongoing, and we're reaching very close to coming up with an engineering-based solution rather than simply referring to previous mandates.
Okay, so trying to put the politics back here and the engineering out front.
That's exactly right.
How are we going to do these things?
Well, and that's one of the beauties of the commission. The two commissioners are supposed to be are engineers. That's how it was established. So we use engineering, science, and technology to try to resolve differences or disputes that develop in the application of our treaties. So we find, and this is what we're going to do in the lower Rio Grande and the water deliveries Mexico makes to the United States, and we've been doing that on the Colorado River as well, demonstrating to Mexico how we manage the water so that they can understand, if the drought continues, what a proportional reduction would look like.
Okay, tell us a little then about you. Are you an engineer?
Yes, licensed in the state of Texas, professional engineer, born and raised in El Paso, was a design engineer, heading a group at Fort Bliss, was a public works director, city of El Paso, left the city of El Paso to join a private concern, worked in the private sector for a number of years, and then got an opportunity to go to the commission and accepted the recommendation and the nomination by the President of the United States. So it's been a challenging career, but every move I've made I've enjoyed, and this one is certainly very exciting.
Well, when you came into this position, there for a while and you saw the challenges, were there some recommendations you made about changes you'd like to see that have taken place? They followed your advice?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We reorganized the office, making us a little more efficient and more accountable to me and to the community. So we've made some internal adjustments, but the commission is sound. I mean, we've been doing this work for 160 years if you go all the way back to 1848, and over 125 when you look at our formal establishment in 1889 as a permanent agency. So tweaking it and working closely with my partner in Mexico is very important. Establishing good relations, not only here in Ciudad Juarez and El Paso, but in all of our offices where we have sister agencies, so sister offices. So it works out very well for us.
Well, how is it arranged? You have a staff, of course, your personal staff that's working, your professional staff working in the office. You still have surveyors, what kind of...
Absolutely,
How do you divide your departments and so on?
Well, you know, we have the commissioners, both countries, under the 44 treaty. It gives us kind of a layout of how we're supposed to be staffed at the top level. So 2 commissioners, both engineering backgrounds,
right.
And then we have 2 principal engineers in each of the 2 sections. So the U.S. section has an engineer that's in charge of engineering, design, construction type projects, and another principal engineer that's responsible for operations and maintenance. The Mexican section has a mirrored organization. Then we both have what we refer to as secretaries in the treaty, but they're foreign affairs officers that read and interpret the treaties and give us guidance as to how we can apply them in different situations that develop. So we both have secretaries, and then both have legal advisors. So that's the core top management. But aside from that, our U.S. domestic responsibilities give us responsibility for HR. We have an HR department, Chief Administrative Officer, Diane Fortes heads that. We also have a legal counsel that not only has a top attorney, but also has some support attorney staff. And then we have a security area where we protect the men and women that are out in the river in the Rio Grande doing water surveys, water quality surveys, and land boundary surveys, where we have our surveyors physically going out and ensuring that the DHS work places a fence not across the border but in the United States. So it's a multifaceted type of approach that we take to all of our requirements.
How many field offices did you say you have?
We have 9, but in El Paso we have, we count that as one office, but it has a satellite in Las Cruces, and then we have a satellite office down at Fort Hancock, because our responsibilities go up to Fort Selden, which is just below.
That far? Huh?
Yes, sir. There's a levee system that goes from El Paso all the way up to just below Caballo Dam, and we have a responsibility for delivering the water from Elephant Butte and Caballo to El Paso and to Mexico at the Acequia that I was describing earlier, Second Madre.
Now these people are all working for me and other Americans, right?
All on the U.S. side, the U.S. section has all Americans.
The other side?
And in the Mexican section, the Mexican commissioner has his staff, and we have offices in, as I was mentioning earlier, we have offices all along the boundary, and Mexico has an office in all those locations right across the border from us.
Do you know approximately how many people are working for us?
For us, yeah, we have approximately 250 people today. It varies, you know, from day to day. But, you know, these are all types of folks, everything from engineering, hydrotechs, hydrotechs to administrative staff, to surveyors, to different folks that are operating heavy equipment.
Right.
So, it varies. We have quite a mixed group of people.
So if someone wants to get into this, they take a civil service test?
Yes. There's you know, USA Jobs.
There are different kinds of civil service tests.
There's different ways to get your name on the list, and one of them is to look at USA Jobs, and we advertise through that, and then go to our website. We have a website that takes you directly to our link and shows you what jobs are available.
Do you want to give that website address?
Well, it's www. Well, I'll probably mess it up, so let me just say,
Or
if they type in USIBWC, it'll pop right up.
Okay.
And they'll be able to go right to our open our website.
Okay. Do you have a local office telephone number you would like to share? Or
Well,
would you just rather leave the
If
website?
it'd be easier if they go through the website, because it has a whole list of contacts and information on how to get into the different offices that we have. And that would probably be best.
Now,
But
where's
our general number is 915-832-4101.
Are you in the federal building downtown?
No. As a matter of fact, we're in the Commons off of a Mason Executive. We're in that group of buildings there.
You really are with a unique organization.
Very unique, and we're happy that we're able to, you know, not only serve El Paso and Ciudad Juarez, the Mexican section that is, but, you know, we have these offices in different points along the boundary that, you know, serve those communities as well. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Well, tell me about some of the most interesting people that you've worked with then before we close this thing out. Some that really did things you weren't expecting them to do.
Well, you know, I've had a wonderful opportunity to meet some very interesting individuals all along the boundary. On the U.S. side, congressmen and senators from all the border states. I get to Washington, D.C. periodically and have a chance to talk to them about some of the problems that we have along the border. So, you know, if it could be a senator from Texas or a senator from Arizona or a governor from Arizona or in California. And then also I have a pretty interesting time when I get a chance to go to Mexico City and meet with government officials from Mexico. The Director General of the CONAGUA, which is the federal agency that runs all the water in Mexico. I've met several of them. They've changed over the years.
Right.
And also I've met with secretary level individuals, both from the Department of Interior, Department of State, met with them over the years also. And so those fascinating group of people, we're very fortunate to have such high quality, intelligent individuals leading these different agencies.
Now, both sides, don't you have to sometimes deal with the stereotypes, the things they think we are that we really are not? And you have to straighten them out on either side of the boundary?
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors that fly from time to time, but we are fortunate that we're able to, you know, kind of set the record straight on things. So, I mean, the one that you brought up earlier about the border fence, you know, a lot of people think that the IBWC has some level of responsibility for the fence, where we don't. We provide guidance, but we don't have any direct responsibility. But those kind of rumors come out, and so we kind of try to set the record straight.
Yeah. What would you like to see happen in the future with your commission?
Well-
Anything that you'd like to make recommendations? We have about 4 minutes left.
Yeah, there's you know, the commission is, as I've said, been around for a while.
Oh, yes.
And we've been under a number of different administrations. Each of them has different charge, and we want to serve our respective countries honorably, and I think we do a pretty good job of doing that. So we have, you know, a need to stay within our budget. You know, this is, I think, a concern that most people are aware of, and I think the federal government does at large a very good job of managing their workforces within their budget. Hopeful that when the new budgets come out that we're able to continue to provide the service that we do today. But if not, we'll find ways to find efficiencies in our organization. We're always looking for ways to do more with less or be a little more efficient.
Just yesterday, my wife Shannon and I were carrying on a discussion about, we see a lot of things going up right here in El Paso, all these bridges and everything up. And a lot of times we think about those going up, but we don't think about the maintenance
Yes.
and the repair and what needs to be done. And you've been in an organization where you've had to deal with those things as they wear out and have to be replaced at much higher cost than originally.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. You might be looking at how can we be more effective dealing with the public, that they're willing to understand that.
And that goes to the budget. You know, infrastructure, aging infrastructure is a problem of the International Boundary and Water Commission, just as it's a problem for a lot of other agencies across the United States. Amistad Dam, we were mentioning
Right.
that earlier before we got on air, is a dam that is, you know, it's got some repairs that are needed. So we're studying whether or not, how we are going to approach it, whether or not we're going to go for the major repair or we're going to phase it over years. So yeah, we have gate structures, dams all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico that we share in the maintenance. Mexico actually pays half of the cost because, as you know, the international boundary follows the centerline channel of the river.
Right.
So if it crosses a dam, half of the dam belongs to Mexico, and they take care of their maintenance, and we do our half. So
Wow.
it's a shared responsibility.
Well, I've told several people who I was going to be interviewing today, and the subject, and it's, what? International Boundary and Water Commission? And some people think, well, that's not very interesting or exciting. Well, I think it is. I think it's very significant when it comes to the farmers and the people in recreation and just the safety of the public from floods or anything else.
Yeah, we have, you know, we meet with farmers. We have citizen forum meetings all along the border. We have one here in El Paso that we have a meeting here in El Paso, or we meet in Las Cruces. And the idea is to get the message out of what we want to tell the public that's occurring with IBWC, and vice versa.
Here's a forum right here. We're getting 27 minutes out about your organization.
This is perfect, perfect.
Thanks for being with us, Ed.
Thank you
We
very
really
much.
are glad that we got to meet you and hear your stories. And out there in TV land, Perspectives El Paso, we're showing another perspective about El Paso, and not just it, all the way from the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf Coast. Thanks for watching. I'm Leon Blevins.